Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into the main event between Islam Makhachev and Dustin Poirier. And I believe Dustin Poirier has a great chance of knocking out Islam Makhachev if he can keep the fight on the feet. Now that's a big if. But I think there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes down to Islam Makhachev striking. Now I wanted to make this video because I put out a reel on my Instagram. You can go watch it at HeyJivePicks on IG or TikTok or wherever you can find me at HeyJivePicks. And it's a 60-second video. And I basically outlined how Dustin Poirier is a bad matchup for Islam on the feet. Why is that? Because Dustin Poirier is a southpaw and Islam Makhachev is a southpaw. And as we've seen throughout a lot of Islam's career, when he's on the feet with guys that are orthodox strikers, he has a lot of success. And I use the example of Islam versus Adriano Martins, which was a long time ago, but it was the perfect way to highlight the holes that he does have. Islam's a southpaw. In that fight against Martins, he was a southpaw, and Martins was able to knock him out with a right hook. Now, got some backlash on that, rightfully so, because you can see here by Barris Bach 1, bro analyzed the fight from 2015. It's valid. Dylan says, you're using film of Islam from a fight that happened 5+ years ago. His striking has improved tremendously since then. DP by KO is possible, but I just don't see it happening. Islam by submission. Both of those are valid. And the reason that I wanted to make this video is because it's not just the fight against Adriano Martins that led me to that conclusion. Okay, I watched a couple of Islam's most recent fights, and those are examples I'm going to be proving here in this video that prove that Dustin Poirier on the feet is a bad matchup for Islam Makhachev. So this common misconception after Volk versus Islam 2, the rematch where Islam knocked him out in the first round, is that Islam's kind of untouchable on the feet. Because if you knock out Volkanovski is a world-class striker, very good on the feet, and Islam knocked him out in round 1. But I think that's a little bit recency bias because you look at Islam's fights, they're not always that clean. And Volk did take that fight on short notice. And in MMA, it comes down to matchups. Like, styles make fights, and Dustin Poirier is a lot different than Volkanovski on the feet as far as the boxing goes, as far as, you know, his size, or even his just technicalities, because he's a southpaw striker. Volk is an orthodox striker. This is a different matchup. So before we get into Islam's weaknesses, we have to give him his flowers and look at some of his strengths. So if you look at the film where Islam is most successful, you could see it here in the Volkanovski rematch. He had a lot of success. And where really that comes down to, he was able to play his game. And what is his game? He loves going against these orthodox strikers. Why? Because he doesn't have to use his hands very much. His hands are really not very good. As far as boxing goes, Islam Makhachev, not a very good boxer, but he's a decent kickboxer because he has very solid kicks. And when he's fighting a guy in an orthodox stance, this opens up a lot of his weapons. So you see here on the picture on the left, Islam loves to control the lead hand of his opponents. So Volkanovski, orthodox, going against Islam, who's a southpaw, you're going to have that lead hand battle almost the entire fight. So Islam's able to kind of control that lead hand. And what does he love to do off of that? He loves to throw his rear kick either to the legs, to the body, stab it as a teep, and that's where he gets a lot of his success. Another picture here, he throws that rear left leg to the inside thigh of Volkanovski, and then here on the right, he throws it kind of stabbing forward to the body of Volkanovski, keeps the guy at range so that he's not in boxing range. You know, if Islam can keep his opponents at kicking range, that's where he has a lot of success. And then here, obviously, after he's able to kind of keep his opponents at range, get him thinking about the low kicks to the body kicks, he likes to mix in those level changes, and he can pick the leg of an orthodox opponent right in front of his front leg. So it's right there for the taking, picks the single leg, and try to get his opponent to the ground. Now, every so often, when Islam does throw, 3 or 4 kicks in a row, kind of lulls him asleep, he gets his opponent thinking about those kicks, he'll wing this lead left hand. And he did land one of them against Volkanovski in the rematch. And it kind of got Volk, I don't want to say rattled, but it was a different strike. He literally threw, I think, one punch with his hands the entire fight, and this was the punch. Other than that, it was all kicks. And then eventually, after he's gone to the legs, after he's gone to the body, after he's mixed in one left hand down the pipe, he throws that head kick. And the head kick against an orthodox opponent is going to be very tough to defend because he's ripped those body, he's ripped it to the leg, and then all of a sudden he goes up top, and that's where he can KO Volk. So we move on to Islam's weaknesses. So here's the example from a long time ago against Adriano Martins. And I would say Islam fights a little bit different than he did back then, but he does have a lot of the same tendencies. So you see here, round one of the fight, Islam throws his lead or his rear left hand, but he doesn't throw anything in front of it. He loves to throw just a naked left hand right down the pipe. And I don't know if that's just because he wants to get you to respect his hands a little bit, so he throws a lot of power with that left hand, but oftentimes it'll lead him to be in a bad position here. So you see the time right here, 3 minutes and 28 seconds. Islam throws that left hand. He doesn't quite hit the mark. He's out of position here, and Martins sees it. Now, Martins is a southpaw, so he sees his right hand is right there for the taking on Islam's chin. We fast forward 9 seconds later, Islam throws that same left hand right down the pipe. He whiffs. He's in the same bad position right here. Martins loads up with that check right hook out of the southpaw stance. Bang, cracks him on the chin. Islam goes down, and that's Islam's only loss. Knockout loss to a right hook to a southpaw. Now, the argument against that is like it was so long ago. You know, Islam's improved so much. And I would say, yes, he has improved. But if you look at his recent fights, those same tendencies are still there. Like against Charles, he's doing the same thing. This is 9 seconds into the fight. First round, 4 minutes and 51 seconds left in the first round. Islam's throwing that same naked left hand right down the middle. Now, he's able to kind of bounce it off of Charles' chest a little bit, and then he's kind of out of position here. He does have a good lead foot to the outside, so Charles isn't in the best position to really counter off of it, and Charles is an orthodox fighter, so he doesn't have a real clear, shorter path as like a left or a southpaw would with that lead hand being out here to counter with a right hook. Charles tries to step in with a right hand, but he misses, and Charles is just not able to capitalize. Right after that, so this is like 3 seconds after, Charles kind of retreats. Islam throws a rear uppercut, naked, just completely whiffs, and then he's out of position again. So you see right here, he has moments recently where he's throwing shots that get him out of position to be countered. And a guy like Charles isn't exactly the best counter puncher. And in this fight, he just really wasn't aggressive whatsoever. And of course, he's an orthodox fighter. That's where Islam feels most comfortable, is against these orthodox fighters, where he doesn't have to deal with that right hand from a southpaw to be countered with a hook or even a left hand down the pipe to counter it. Later in the fight, same thing. This is round 2. He throws a naked left hand. Charles is able to slip it to the inside, but Charles doesn't counter at all. He actually, well, he does counter. He counters with his own left hook, but Islam is able to kind of pull back a little bit. But again, he's out of position. It's very different. He's getting himself out of position with these naked left hands down the middle, and I would assume Dustin Poirier, being one of the better boxers, better counterpunchers, he's going to be able to capitalize on these opportunities here. So he's out of position, throwing that left hand. Charles throws the right hand, but Islam's super out of position here. Off balance, fading away, and just doesn't look great. Later in the fight, about 30 seconds later, I guess, round 2, Charles, I believe, kind of steps in with like a knee, and he ends up here in this left picture right here. He kind of ends up in a southpaw stance, but it's not like he was set that way. So he kind of steps in with his right leg and ends up in a southpaw stance. Islam fires a jab out there, but as you can see, if Charles was a southpaw and he had a decent right hook right there, right hook to the chin is open. Dustin Poirier loves that right hook. And then just another observation here. this is kind of in an exchange. Islam's not great in exchanges. He's not good in the pocket. And you could see here, he's in an exchange with Charles. This punch is very, very weak. Like, straight armed. His knuckles are up towards the ceiling. He's going to, if he lands this, he's going to land it with like the inside of his thumb. It's not really going to do a lot of damage. If he gets into these exchanges, he usually just kind of wings these wild hooks that aren't technical. If they land, it's going to look super clubbing. It's not going to look very sharp. So just an observation there. And then we look at the first fight against Volkanovski. And Volkanovski, as I said earlier, is an orthodox fighter, but a lot of the success he had in the first fight is when he would stance switch into the southpaw stance, and Islam just really didn't have an answer for it. So you see here in the first round, left picture here, he's in the orthodox stance. He grabs that left hand, the lead left hand from Islam, stance switches into a southpaw stance, comes with the right hook. Islam has his chin down, that looks good. But Volk is able to get in on the inside and finish with a left hand down the pipe, which kind of catches, kind of the shoulder chin area, but still gets Islam off balance. So a good combination there from Volkanovski, where he switches from orthodox into the southpaw stance and is able to land a good left hand down the pipe. Move on. This is a replay. I don't have the time stamp here, but this is a better angle from what I saw when I was watching film, where they get into an exchange, right? And as I said, Islam just kind of throws these wild hooks in these exchanges. They don't always look well. But Volkanovski again switches to a southpaw stance, throws that same left hand down the pipe, and then to follow up, Islam is coming with his own left hook, and Volkanovski is right there for a right hook, but he's just not able to finish it because Islam kind of wraps that right arm around Volk's head, and it kind of catches him off balance. But as you can see, that right hook, there's a path for the right hook to hit there. Move on to round two. Another opportunity here for Volk, where he goes from a orthodox stance, switches into the southpaw stance, and he was doing this a lot throughout the fight, where he would switch from orthodox to southpaw, get on the inside, and able to land combinations. So he switches into the southpaw stance, goes for the same thing here, trying to slap down the right hand, or the left hand of Islam, so he can finish with that left hand down the middle. Islam just kind of shells up. So he's already got hit with it once. He just kind of shells up. He moves back. He tries to counter with his own right hand here, but Volkanovski is off to the side and winning the lead foot battle there. And then ultimately, Islam gets pushed up against the cage, falls up against the cage. And it's another good moment for Volkanovski, where he goes in with the southpaw stance, and Islam doesn't look great. Later in the fight, round number 3. Now, this is a little bit more telling because Volkanovski was set up in a southpaw stance. He would kind of switch his stances throughout the fight, but he never really committed to a southpaw stance. Here, he was a little bit more committed than just kind of switching into the southpaw stance during a combination. Here's Volk set up in the southpaw stance. Islam fires a jab out there. Doesn't even look close to the mark. And Volkanovski steps in with a lead right hook. He fires it off. Islam partially blocks it, but as you could see here, it still pushed him back. Like, Volkanovski, for the little amount of time that he was in a southpaw stance, had success with that right hook right there. Here we go. Later, once again, Volkanovski set up in the southpaw stance for probably 1, maybe 2 seconds. Islam throws that rear left hand right down the pipe, as he loves to do, as we've seen. It kind of glances off Volkanovski's forehead there. And as you can see right here down in the picture, I'll try to move my face out of there so you can see. Islam, he's there to be hit with a right hook. Volkanovski, not a normal southpaw. He's probably not super comfortable like torquing his body that way. But he's there to be hit with a right hook. Ultimately, Volkanovski just decides to frame away and go back into orthodox and stay safe there. But, it's there. It's there. And as you can see, like, Islam still loves to throw that naked left hand down the pipe, and he's still there to get countered. So how does this work with Dustin Poirier? Dustin Poirier is one of the best southpaws when he's fighting another southpaw. Like, his experience against southpaws have shown he's an elite striker against other southpaws. As we've seen in the Conor fight, we saw it against BSD. He's very good. And a lot of these southpaws, they don't go up against other southpaws that often, so they don't really get that in-fight experience to really feel comfortable in those situations. And one of the big things we saw in the Conor fight, and I saw immediately here in the BSD fight, BSD is a southpaw. Dustin loves to rip a low leg kick. I think that's going to be huge here against Islam, because if he can start chopping the leg of Islam early, get him to be compromised on that leg, that changes the whole fight. You hear Joe Rogan say it all the time, but Dustin Poirier has great low leg kicks against southpaws, because here it is. The leg's right there. Hit it to the outside. He really chops it. He chops that one 11 seconds into the first round against BSD. And then we look at the hands here against BSD. Look, this is 14 seconds into the fight. BSD's pumping the jab out there. Dustin parries it perfectly. And then he comes with a right hand down the pipe, just like Islam would love to throw. And Dustin Poirier's loading up on that right hook. Now, it kind of BSD's left hand kind of glances off Poirier, and Poirier is able to somewhat land that right hook, but BSD's forward pressure kind of led him a little bit too much inside to where Dustin couldn't land it perfectly. But you could see, this is 16 seconds into the fight. Poirier is already ready to unleash that right hook. Later in the fight, not really that much later, a couple minutes after, southpaw stance, BSD pumps the jab. Poirier is able to slip the jab while still landing his own left hand right around the ear, and that did wobble BSD for a split second. A couple seconds later, BSD he felt that left hand. He throws his own left hand right down the pipe. Poirier falls back, lets it go through, and then counters with his right hand to the side of the head. Later in round one, and this could be huge as well, because I think Islam has a very good clinch game, and that's where he did a lot of his work against Volk. Grabbing the head and then throwing those knees up the middle to the body. And in these situations, he's not really going to be super safe, because Poirier's boxing is so clean and so sharp, and he's going to be able to land if he's able to frame off. So right here, you see Poirier frame off on BSD. When BSD is trying to clinch him, they reset for about a split second, and then Poirier is able to land a right hook, bounce it right off the right or the left side of BSD's face. And then, of course, round two, the kill shots that Poirier was able to land on the southpaw BSD, where BSD's throwing the naked left hand, Poirier slips it, and Poirier is able to land his own left hand right down the pipe. That drops BSD to a knee. And then a couple seconds later, BSD goes again with that left hand down the pipe. Poirier slips, but this time, instead of slipping to the right and landing the left hand, he slips to the left and then finishes it off with a right hook to the chin. BSD's knocked out cold. Now, a lot of you might be saying, well, BSD's not a very good striker. He's very aggressive, kind of reckless at times, and I would agree. But then you also have to look against Conor McGregor. Now, Conor McGregor is one of the best boxers in the UFC. Whether you like it or not, he's still very good on the feet. He's also a southpaw striker. And Poirier had a lot of success against a guy like Conor McGregor. So Conor McGregor, 18 seconds into the fight, fires off a left hand right down the middle. Poirier is able to lean back and counter with a right hook to the side of the head. Keep it going. Dustin Poirier is he's framing, trying to keep himself safe, where McGregor's throwing a 1-2 right down the middle. McGregor throws that jab just to kind of paw out there, fires the left hand. Poirier is able to block it with his rear or his near side right elbow, I guess. Then McGregor comes with another uppercut, little shovel uppercut right to the face, and Poirier is able to land just a beautiful right hook and catch McGregor. I mean, that's a really tough punch to land in all this chaos. You know, got a 1-2, blocks it. Poirier comes with another shovel uppercut, and McGregor comes with another shovel uppercut, and Poirier's still able to land a really clean right hook on Conor as he's fading away. And this is from the, I guess, the third McGregor fight, but it was the second most recent one, where this is just picture perfect. Like, McGregor's throwing a naked left hand. So is Poirier. But the difference is, as you can see in this second picture, is McGregor misses and Poirier lands. So if Islam's throwing that naked left hand, I would bet my money that Poirier is able to slip it and land something of his own. Now, McGregor's got his chin a little bit higher, and Poirier is a little bit leaning forward. He's able to get his head off to the right while still landing a nice left hand right down the middle. So the overview of this, what we all want to bring it back to is, I don't believe Islam Makhachev's striking is really, it's not a lot different. Sure, it's improved, but the improvements that I've seen from Islam from the time that he got knocked out by Martins and what he is now is that he just doesn't really let his hands go that often. He still does, and he has the same tendencies, but he really just loves to stay at kicking range and kick. And against the southpaw, he doesn't have that many options to kick. He can go with the low leg kick, but I would take Poirier's low leg kicks over Islam Makhachev's. He can't really rip to the body because it's not really an option unless you're going to be ripping it super hard. You got to time it really well because you got a lead hand there that can block it. And a head kick is it's a lot tougher to land if you're a southpaw going up against another southpaw. So the options are limited for Makhachev on the feet, and ultimately he's probably going to have to go, or he's going to have to use his hands at some point. And as we've seen in recent memory, he still has the same tendencies. Just throw a left hand right down the pipe, and if he's going to do that, Poirier, he's going to be there to counter him. And as you can see down here, this little picture with Dia Davis, my own boxing coach at Boca Boxing, this is from the UFC Countdown. This is the exact combination that I'm kind of looking at. Is like, if Dia is Islam, he's throwing that naked left hand right down the pipe, and Poirier is able to slip and land his own left hand right down the pipe. So you can see they're working on it, right? Another thing, it's just two side-by-sides, right? So Islam throws a naked left hand. We showed it right here that he can counter with his own left hand right down the pipe when slipping off to the right. And then number two, if Islam misses, then Poirier can go with his own right hook. So he's got two options to counter off of that left hand that Islam loves to throw. He really doesn't set it up. He just kind of walks you down, throws his kicks, which he's not really going to have a lot of options in this fight to throw his kicks. And then he's going to throw a left hand down the pipe, and there's counters for Dustin to be had. Now, the reality of the situation is, right, we can go through all that. All that. I truly believe Dustin Poirier has a massive gap when it comes to this fight on the feet. But the reality of the situation is none of that matters if he can't stuff the takedowns from Islam Makhachev. And as you can see in these two side-by-sides, Islam Makhachev shooting the takedown and BSD shooting the takedown. It's most likely where Islam's going to be shooting takedowns, and he's probably going to get them because Dustin Poirier doesn't really have the best takedown defense. And Islam is one of the best grapplers in the UFC at this point. So the reality of the situation is, yes, I believe Dustin Poirier can knock out Islam Makhachev on the feet, and I think he has a great chance to do so, but there's only that chance if he can keep the fight on the feet, or even if Islam elects to keep the fight on the feet. Because just to be honest, guys, like, everyone kind of expects Islam to go in here and roll over on Dustin Poirier. So maybe there's part of him that kind of wants to test his skills against Dustin Poirier. Maybe he wants to see where he's at in the striking department. And that's maybe where he could get caught. But we also know that, you know, these Dagestani guys are pretty disciplined, and you know, they usually go with the most safe game plan. So, yeah, that's the reality of the situation. Dustin's got to stuff the takedowns, but if he does, I truly believe he has a great chance to win this fight on the feet. I think he's levels above Islam when it comes to the striking department, and I think it's a great matchup for him because Poirier is a great southpaw striker. He does very well against southpaws, and Islam's a southpaw who I don't think really does very well against other southpaws and has really found his success going up against these orthodox fighters. So appreciate you for watching. Let me know your comments below if you agree or disagree. Again, I don't think this is like a lock for Dustin Poirier to knock him out, but I do think there's a path there that he can exploit and, you know, maybe pull off a big upset against Islam. So there's my little break or a film breakdown for you. I do a lot of film research, and I would love to share it with you guys in the future. So if you liked or if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Till next time, Hey Job Picks, we out.